Welcome back, everybody. It is time once again for the weekly college football award show here on Jackwagon Sports. What we do, if you're new here, is we look at the week that just passed, which is week 8. We give you the best offense, defense, team, and the best game. And a couple rules before we get into everything here. You can be nominated for every single award, but you can only win one award per week. And second rule is if you played in FCS school, you're ineligible for any awards. So if you hang 81 like Oregon did on Portland State, you can't be nominated for best offense. So let's go ahead and dive right into this week's nominees and winners. Alrighty, as always, we start on the offensive side of the football. We have three nominees for best offense of week 8. They are Boston College, Oklahoma State, and Florida State. Let's go ahead and break these guys down individually. Starting with Boston College. I don't think anybody ever expected to see them on the best offense list. But this week, they had 38 points against Georgia Tech, 563 total yards, and one turnover in that game. Our next nominee is Florida State, another ACC school. They played Duke at home. They put up 38 points, 420 yards, and one turnover in that game for Florida State. And last but not least, we have Oklahoma State, who went on the road and played West Virginia. 48 points, 491 total yards, and they did have three turnovers in that game. So your winner for best offense of week 8 is going to go to Florida State. I think they played a top tier defense in Duke. Slade and Nick agreed, and that's why we gave Florida State the nod. Huge win for the Noles at home, and that should really help propel them to the rest of their season. I think they have a pretty lackadaisical schedule outside of a rivalry game with Miami, and then also Florida down the road. So let's go ahead and let's flip to the other side of the ball here, and let's give you our nominees for the best defense of Week 8. We have James Madison, Michigan, and Ohio State. Let's go ahead and break these guys down. First up, we have James Madison. It says 0 points allowed here. I understand the score was 20-9. 2 points were off of a safety, and the touchdown was a punt return for a touchdown or kick return for a touchdown. So technically, the James Madison defense didn't give up any points. I will say, when we look at the Michigan offense here in a minute, I accidentally credited them an extra 7 points, but we'll talk about that. They only gave up 169 yards. They held Marshall to -4 rushing yards, and they forced two turnovers in that game as well. Our next nominee is Ohio State. They played Penn State at home this past week. Only gave up 12 points, 240 total yards, and they did not force a turnover in that game. Very uncharacteristic of the Penn State offense. Drew Alar's first time in really an intense environment like this, but nonetheless, a very impressive performance by Ohio State on the defensive side of the football. Next up, we have Michigan. They went and played Michigan State, their bitter in-state rival. 0 points allowed, 182 yards allowed, and they did force two turnovers. They also had a pick six in that game, and that absolutely deserves to land them on the best defense list. And your winner for best defense of week 8 goes to James Madison. As I said, Marshall has a very good rushing attack. I understand they were down their starting running back, but to hold them to -4 rushing yards is very, very impressive. A huge win on the road for James Madison. Unfortunately, they're still ineligible to be in the postseason. They didn't even make the Sun Belt Championship game, but huge result for James Madison and an outstanding performance on the defensive side of the football for them. Now it's time for your best team award. We have three nominees, two from the Big Ten and one from the Sun Belt again, but we changed the Sun Belt team. We have Michigan and Ohio State and South Alabama. Let's go ahead and look at these guys. First up, we have South Alabama. They played Southern Miss this past week. 55 points, 647 total yards, and they did have one turnover. On the defensive side of the football, they only gave up 3 points, 149 yards allowed, and two forced turnovers. Huge game for South Alabama as they continue to trend upwards as they go throughout the rest of their season, still in contention to win the Sun Belt. Next team we have is Michigan, and this is what I was talking about. I actually credited their offense 7 extra points. Technically, their offense only scored 35 points. They had 477 total yards, 0 turnovers, but they did win 49-0. They allowed 0 points, 182 yards, 2 forced turnovers. We already talked about that. Let's go ahead and look at Ohio State now. Already talked about their defense on the offensive side of the football. 20 points, 365 total yards, and one turnover in that game for the Buckeyes. Your winner for best team of week 8 is going to go to Michigan. To do that to an in-state rival, normally this game, no matter how good or bad one team is, it's always a hard-fought, close game. To get blown out 49 to nothing at home is dangerous. That is ugly. Michigan absolutely deserves all this praise. South Alabama, very impressive as well. Southern Miss is, I would argue, one of the worst teams in college football this season. And then with Ohio State, just one, obviously Penn State has one of the, I think, top five defenses in the country. But you'd still like to see their offense produce a little bit more in that situation. But that's just how close that game was. But with how impressive Michigan was on both sides of the ball, we just had to give them the nod this week for best team. And it's time for our final award of week 8. We have 3 games here, Minnesota at Iowa, Pitt at Wake Forest, and Utah at USC. We did have 2 honorable mentions with Texas at Houston. Texas had to make a huge 4th down stop in the red zone at the end of that game to keep that game from going to overtime potentially, or Houston might have gone for 2 and the win. And the other game was Virginia at UNC. Huge upset win for Virginia. I don't think anybody saw that one coming. UNC, I think, was 24-point favorites. But Virginia goes on the road. They have a thrilling last minute interception to seal the victory. Huge win for them. Those 2 games just missed out on being added to this list. But let's go ahead and look at these 3 games individually. First up, we have probably the most controversial from this past weekend. We have Minnesota at Iowa. Minnesota wins 12-10. Iowa, of course, took that punt back to the house at the minute 12 left, or minute 32 left, excuse me. But it was ruled that it was an invalid fair catch, and so they brought it back. Iowa ended up going 3 and out, and that the game was over at that point. Minnesota holds on for the win. Their first time winning the Floyd of Rosedale in Iowa, up beating Iowa at home since 1999. So congratulations to Minnesota for doing that, albeit in a controversial fashion. Next game we had was Pittsburgh at Wake Forest. This game had it all. Second week in a row, or not, second time in 3 weeks in an ACC game. We have a team unable to close out that last minute. 2 weeks ago, it was Miami against Georgia Tech. This is a little bit different situation. Still kind of embarrassing, but not as bad, I would argue. Um, Pitt had the ball. They just needed to get a first down. Game's over. They ice the game. The quarterback scrambles. He gets out of the pocket. He is running for a first down. He slides. The problem with him sliding is he slid a yard too early. As soon as you give yourself up and you start your slide, that's where the play is blown dead. He was a yard short of the first down. So Pitt trusted their defense. They punted the ball away. Wake Forest ends up scoring the game-winning touchdown with just 7 seconds left. Huge result for Wake Forest. I really felt like this could possibly be the last game either of these teams would win the rest of the season. We'll have to wait and see if that comes true, but nonetheless, a huge win for Wake Forest at home. Next game we had was Utah at USC. Anytime these 2 teams get together, it seems to be a thriller. Huge win for Utah on the road. They keep their college football playoff hopes alive. Both teams are still in the Pac-12 race, I would say. They both have Pac-12 across the board has difficult schedules upcoming. But USC, with their second loss, now seemingly eliminated from college football playoff contention. USC actually went on a run towards the end of the game. They outscored Utah 20-6 in the final 15 minutes. They technically, or before Utah kicked the game-winning field goal, that was a 20-3 run, and they took the lead with a minute and 46 seconds left off of a costly Utah turnover. They scored on the very next play. Um, Possibly scored a little too quickly. Utah gets the ball back. 11 play, 54-yard drive in that final minute, 46 seconds. That was definitely aided by penalties and a lot of other stuff that happened. But Utah, nonetheless, kicks the game-winning field goal as time expires. Huge result for Utah. This was a very fun game to watch. Your winner for best game of week 8 is going to go to that very same game we were just talking about. The other games were great, but this one just had a little added drama with the weight of being eliminated from the college football playoff. Your season hopes, kind of on the line here, and it just had all the drama in it. Like I said, anytime these 2 teams get together, it creates an instant classic game. So we had to give it the nod there for best game of week 8. So that'll do it for this week's award show. As always, we thank you guys so much for joining us. We love bringing this to you every single week. If you missed past weeks, go check those out in our playlist here. If I think we started on YouTube here after week 5. So if you want weeks 0 through 4, head over to our TikTok and check it out. We post it over there as well as most of our other videos we do. We upload content over there daily. We have weekly videos that come out here on the Jack Wagon Sports YouTube channel. We do on Mondays, the college football stock market will come out. This video comes out on Tuesdays. On Thursdays, we release Blitz Boys podcast. That's where Slade and I we review the week behind. We talk about all the headlines that came out of that weekend. And then on Saturday mornings, we do our game day like show, Out of the Tunnel, headlines, stories, betting picks, head to head picks, all that stuff is on Saturday morning. So if you guys are interested in stuff like that, make sure you check out those videos as well. That'll do it for this episode. We will see you in the next video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.